What seems like a normal family surviving any way possible in a rough-and-tumble mining town, a family that was okay with making their way on the darker side of vice and embracing the lifestyle of thieving and selling sex to make their way. Those around them knew them as a wild family, but a family that fit in this town of wild and violent people. However, when the body of a miner is discovered, the town is shocked with the truth of this family when it comes to light. Hello, my name is Summer, and this is Paying for It.
I got something between my legs gonna make a dead man come on. That. I got something between my legs gonna make a dead man come on. That. I'm gonna turn back my mattress and let you all my springs. I want you to find me, daddy, till the bell do ring. Oh, daddy, want you to shave and dry.
Thank you for being here for episode 31. I'm excited to be here. It's spooky season, baby, and we are back for our second spooky episode of this season here on Paying for It. All right. Well, if you are new here, welcome to Paying for It. Normally, we talk about women who made history because of their willingness to provide something that so clearly was sought after. Here on Paying for It, I like to focus on the women of history who lived a pretty awesome life, to prove that our ladies of the night didn't all suffer and live a life of despair like they want us to believe. In fact, most of my stories focus on women who found themselves in a position of power, freedom, and are very, very wealthy. However, it's Halloween time, and it's just like all things in life, you can't have one without having the other. So this month, we are diving into the darker, creepier, and spookier stories, and today is the perfect story for Halloween. We will be diving deep into a family's history, a family that always lived on the darker side of vice. However, on discovery of a body near the family's property will have everyone in the mining town shocked. The story of the family will also far outlive the lives of the entire family. A prolific serial killer family, or just a story that got twisted throughout time? We will be getting to all that and more on today's episode. But before we do, hello, how the heck are ya? I hope you are doing so very well, and I hope you've been enjoying your October and your spooky season like I have been. Can't really see, but I have the creepiest clown shirt on. There it is. Spooky, spooky, spooky. I'm looking forward to my trip to New Orleans. It's been a countdown since October 1st, honestly, and I'm very excited. It's going to be a good time. This past week, we went to the fair, which I was, it's our annual fair trip. We go around this time every year, so we were pretty excited for that. We went and ate a lot of food, drank some beer, sat in some cars, and yeah, it's just been a good time. We just had a good time. Lots of food, lots of cars, lots of beer. And, what else is a fair good for? We didn't ride any rides this year, which I'm okay with. Honestly, fair rides kind of are spookier than most spooky stories, to be honest. But yeah, other than that, I've just been working, hanging out, and living life as much as possible as I can, getting ready for our trip, and just, we're also looking for a car. That's why we sat in a lot of cars at the fair. We're looking for 2 cars, honestly, but Yeah, I've been really vibing with the RAV4. So finally I was able to sit in one and kind of feel it out. And yeah, I'm happy with it. And then we've just been chilling, and I've been working a lot, and it's been a crazy, hectic, drama-filled at work. I mean, I kind of have to expect it. That is the restaurant business. You can't go into the industry expecting it to just be all cookie cutter and honky dory. But yeah, other than that, life is good, I think. But yeah, we continue to decorate for Halloween. If you see, our spider webs are out, and my mother will be here in less than a week. And yeah, so I've just been preparing for that, honestly. And, yeah, just doing that. I have to like deep clean the house here soon, and just, oh boy, is that gonna be fun. But yeah, that's where we're at, and I hope that whatever is going on, you are having the best time ever and you're enjoying spooky season if that's your kind of thing. If not, I hope you're avoiding all the spooky things you don't want to see. Yeah, there's a couple movies that I can't wait to see. When my mom's here, we're gonna watch Talk to Me, and I've been rewatching scary movies, my favorites, just because that is what you do when you decorate the house. You put on a spooky soundtrack or a spooky movie, and you get down to business, and that's what I've been doing. Yeah, so that is pretty much all I have for you today on just me and my life. I hope you're doing well, and shall we get into it? Well, today we have a family that will make other dysfunctional families look like a happy, normal family. We are traveling back to the late 1800s into the outskirts of a very rough and tumble mining town, and one that, when drunken fights broke out, they more often than not ended up in murder due to stabbings or just beaten to death. This is a town that truly embraced vice. The family found themselves settling into this town and embracing the vice life. They often visited the police and find themselves locked up. However, most in the town just assumed that this was a normal family living their life in this wild town, making their way any way possible, like a lot of other people that were in that town. It isn't until the body of a local miner that this sinful reality of the family is uncovered, and the real darkness of their story is also uncovered. So with that, you know what time it is. Grab yourself a cocktail, a mocktail, a coffee, whatever you fancy. Today I have a Dr. Pepper. I had to go into work today, and, I went to the fair and was drinking then, and no need to drink now. So we've got a Dr. Pepper. Grab whatever you're feeling, if it's a glass of wine, if it's a cocktail, if it's a coffee, if it's a Dr. Pepper like me, whatever you fancy. I hope you're enjoying it. And yeah, cheers, 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 cheers to you. And cheers to me, cheers to Halloween, and let me introduce you to the Sheffleback family. Today's story will start with Nancy Chase, who, like most of our stories, childhood is a mystery to history. We aren't sure much of Nancy's background. We know she may have been part indigenous, but I think this part of this story is really important because she and her family were living in a time when things were extremely racist on a whole different level, on anyone who wasn't white. Okay, this is really apparent on all of the earlier reporting about this family. So all of the articles that you can find back when this originally happened, you can feel it. You see it in the writing, you hear it in the writing, and you're just like, ew. So I think it is safe to say that Nancy may not have had the best life, as she grew up in a world she was born into that was not the nicest to her. Does this excuse what she and her boys will later go on to do? No, but I do think that it's important to know the backstory, and any story that leads to death, you kind of want to know why and what would have caused this. So she grew up in a world that was quite aggressive and mean towards her, so she probably grew up quite aggressive and mean as well. These articles kind of give you a glimpse into the world and what her life may have looked like just because she was part indigenous, you know? They kind of blame this whole situation on the fact that she was indigenous and like said that's why she was mean and that's why she was evil. And it's just like, oh, come on. Anyways, our story really starts when Nancy meets Michael Sheffleback. They will go on to get married in Dubuque, Iowa. The time period is a bit foggy, however, it was most likely mid-1800s. Shortly after marrying, the couple will go on to move to Lawrence County to become farmers. During their marriage, they will have had at least 6 children. However, the marriage seemed not to be a happy one. As soon Nancy will go on and accuse her husband of quote-unquote revolting crimes when trying to be granted a divorce. During this process, Michael will accuse Nancy of crimes as well. So it's, a typical marriage, like divorce proceeding. They're just fighting with each other. They're accusing each other of nasty things, and it's just not a happy one. I mean, divorces usually aren't, but you know what I mean. It's a rough divorce. This will go on to be a very public and messy divorce for the town. So everyone kind of knew the Sheffleback's drama. Everyone was kind of in it, talking shit, had their opinions. This was a time of judgmental freaks. So yeah, people were judgy. This was a small town as well, so everyone in it was in your business, judging and being all out rude to you when they felt like you weren't living with the correct morals, all right? So they're just saying shit, talking shit, everyone's talking shit, and just everyone's in these people's business. After the divorce was settled, well, at least I think it was settled. It's very unclear, actually, if they actually got divorced or what happened. But what happens next is a bit unclear as well. It is said that because of the divorce, this leads Michael to abandon the family. He will then disappear and never be heard from again. Not only that, but his life trail will disappear as well, which isn't uncommon for this time period, to be honest. For this time period, it is not unusual, and he could just be that. It faded away into history. However, as we travel deeper into this story, I start to question what really happened to Michael Sheffleback. So keep that in mind, and we will double back. Due to the quote-unquote divorce, if that's what happened, made living in the Lawrence County on the farm no longer comfortable due to the judgment of the townspeople. Okay, so Nancy and her 6 children will pack up their belongings in the early 1890s, looking for a fresh start. They will settle in the Swindle Hills of Joplin. They are going to be entering into Joplin in the midst of Joplin Creek's digging. So, a mining town, and it will have lots of minings, a mining town, and with mining towns comes money and vice. and especially for this time period. The family is going to settle into a shack, and in the shack, they will also begin to settle into this more life of crime. The home of the Sheffleback would be off and often stop for the police. This is due to a couple of different reasons, honestly, that we're going to get into right now. The boys of the family were well known at being thieves. The house that wasn't just visited, so they were very thievy kind of boys. They got into the life of like stealing and kind of, yeah, they weren't the ones to go mining, that's for sure. They were kind of just the ones to prey on like drunk men and like steal from them and stuff like that. And the house that wasn't just visited by cops because it was also ran as a brothel. So Ma, Nancy, would act as the madam of said house, and her daughters would be working girls within the house. She mainly just employed her daughters. So history shows that the boys of the family would spend time in the penitentiary for theft, and the girls also spent time in jail for prostitution. Eventually, their time in Swindle Hills will come to an end, and most of the family again will pick up and move in 1894. They move across state lines to Pickers Point near Glenna, Kansas, on the outskirts of this extremely lawless town. Now, mind you, it's not that far from Joplin. They're still very close to Joplin, so they're still running things in Joplin as well. Like one of her sons, who we'll go on to talk about in a little bit, he runs a tamale cart. His nickname is Tamale. So it's like they have things still there, and they're still, so they just, things must have been getting hot for the brothel business, I'm assuming, or they just were ready to expand. I'm not exactly sure exactly how it went down, but throughout this time period, they're in both places. Now, for this time, mining towns were common and lawless, some worse than others. This mining town was one that was pretty fucking rough. It's just known for its aggressive violentness. So in Glenna, around 1877, is when white men discover it was rich in lead, and then later they will discover it was also very rich in zinc. However, it's important to note that the indigenous people of this land were always well aware of the lead way before these white dudes came along looking in 1877, okay? And I think that's important to note for probably all my stories in these mining towns. It's like, the discovery was when the white men discovered it, and they made it a profit, whereas the indigenous people are known to know things about their land and use what they must, but respect Mother Nature in the end anyway. So yeah, they discover this lead, and you know, when a discovery happens and they're ready to make money off of it, things go a boom. So by the late 1890s, Glenna had about 265 producing mines, 2 banks, 36 grocers, and more than 4 dozen other retail stores. So, you know, Glenna was thriving by the time the Sheffleback family found themselves settling into the outskirts of this town. Picker Point, though, was full of rundown cabins and shacks and abandoned mines, and the vibe of the town was much rougher than Glenna itself was. So this was the town that everyone who just couldn't fit into city living, I guess, and being a normal person, they would go to Picker Point. It was full of miners who turned to vice and often found themselves in many gambling halls, saloons, or opium dens. This was a place where nightly a drunken fight would break out and often end in murder. The perfect place for a family who also lived their life deep, deep in vice and made their way dealing vice. So Ma, her 3 boys, Ed, George, and Mike, and Ma's 2 daughters, Emma and Louisa, are at this point. Oh, and also at this point, George's wife, Cora, find themselves getting cozy in a 4-room log cabin in Picker Point. That immediately is used as a brothel where the girls, Emma, Louise, and Cora, would turn tricks to earn money. Eventually, 2 other ladies, Rose Bain and Anna McComb, will join the family and ply their trade within the house as well. Ma will go on and get remarried to Charles Wilson, and he will join the family. And he's kind of already lived a life of vice, but once he gets introduced to the boys, vice becomes like second nature to them, and he's stealing and making his way with fraud and stuff like that as well. This house was considerably being this house was constantly being raided by the police for the fact that it was a brothel, but also because the men of the house also ran a lot of gang-related business throughout the town, and, they were stealing and shit, so often this house was getting visited also by the police. So this brothel wasn't one of these sophisticated houses that have been the glamour of that lifestyle back then. This one was very rundown, very ran, I would say pretty dirty and pretty skeezy. Skeezy? Yeah. Sleazy? No, skeezy. This is a rough brothel we're talking about that had gambling, drinking, drugs, and sex. A ton of fights would break out, and soon we will find the family also had some nefarious things going on behind closed doors. The family will live like this for about 3 years, just turning tricks, thieving, and getting raided, rinse and repeat. That will all change, though, in the summer of 1897. One day in the summer, Frank Galbraith set up an arrangement with Emma Sheffleback for later that evening at the brothel. So Frank sets an appointment with Emma, Ma's daughter, and that's what he assumed. Around 10 p.m., he will arrive back at the house ready for his arrangement with Emma, but he will be denied entry by Ma. This was apparently due to the fact that he was extremely inebriated, and she felt that it would be a bad idea to allow him inside. Frank will leave pretty angry. Now, my question here is, what was the meat of the story? Did he give a down payment? Were they trying to scam him? Because it was often that they were allowing drinking and stuff at the house, but maybe it was because he came drunk and didn't start there sober. The details are a little shady and unclear. However, we know he came to the house pretty drunk, denied entry by Ma, wasn't allowed to see Emma. He leaves pretty angry. He will return to the house at about 2 a.m. This time, he's insisting that he'll be allowed to see Emma. It is unclear here if he had sobered up or if he was worse off. I'm not sure, but Nancy will again refuse entry and be like, nope, you're not coming in. And this time Frank will get pretty fucking mad and demand that she let him in and attempt to force himself into the house. A scuffle is started pretty much. However, Ma will have none of that, and she will chase him off, kind of pushing him out of the house and off the porch with a corn knife. This will then alert her sons, Wilson and Ed, and they will go on and grab their guns and start shooting at the fleeing miner. At this point, he's already running because of Ma chasing him with a gun. Now he's trying to get the fuck out of there because they're shooting at him. And he's like, oh fuck, I gotta go. Wilson's shots missed, but one of Ed's bullets will strike Frank in the hip, sadly. Franklin will then drop to the ground, but very quickly pop up and attempt to keep fleeing because he knows he's in trouble. Of course, he's been shot, so this will be a slower, and he will quickly be caught up to. Ed, though, will catch up to Frank, and he will go on to shoot him in the head, killing Frank. But Ed does not stop there. No. He will go on to cut his throat with a corn knife, like kind of making a show of it, which is disturbing nonetheless. And Ed and George will go on later to strip this man of his clothes and cast him in a nearby mining shaft, a pretty close mining shaft to their house. Afterwards, Ed, who was known around town as Tamale or Chili Man, because he owned that wagon at 3rd and Main in Joplin where he would sell tamales, he would casually enter back into their house and go on to make tamales for dinner, where the family will sit down for a meal. Which is a little weird because didn't he return back to the house at 2 a.m.? Why are you guys eating so late? Yeah. Confused by that, but that was part of the story. He apparently made them tamales. Even though it should say most of the people in the house had witnessed what just happened. And they were all just casual about it. So, okay. A bit later, according to some sources, it was around 2 months later, a passerby will discover the body of Frank when looking into that shaft. Like innocently just checking this mining shaft out. He discovers it. Of course, he's going to freak the fuck out and immediately went to the police to report what he found. On July 29th, 1897, the Daily Globe will report on the case, stating that Deputy Charlie Rains, Constable Lefebvre, and Deputy Radley were investigating this as a murder, clearly. They were able to pinpoint the identity of Frank due to tax receipts that were found on his body. The 3 men will continue to investigate in secret for about 10 days. So they're not really telling anything much about their investigation. They're actually kind of playing it off as if they're not even investigating it, which also wasn't uncommon for this time period. People were dying left and right. Leading us to Wednesday, July 28th, the officers working Frank's case will conduct a late-night raid on the Sheffleback's house at Picker Point and another house in Joplin. It's unclear if it was the original house they owned in Joplin or if it was something they opened later. These raids will be big for the police, as the house in Joplin will produce a witness to the crime. While the raid on the main house will result in the arrest of Ed and Nancy and another unidentified woman at the residence. Charles Wilson, Nancy's husband, has already fled the area and was on the run due to previous fraud warrants. So he's already out, but they're also looking for him. Now, the news circuit went wild with this, and the Daily Globe reported the days following the arrest. The Sheffleback outfit are tough element, and almost the entire family are noted for crime. Lacency, burglary, and embezzlement had been the men's crime. The mother of the Sheffleback boys has been keeping boarders of about the lowest stripe ever allowed to breathe outside of the bars. Now, at first, the town was just shocked over the senseless murder of Frank the miner. After the arrest of the boys, Coral Sheffleback and Rose Bain will eventually turn on the family. Now, mind you, Cora is George's husband, and Rose is just a lady who was working in the house. Telling of not only witnessing the murder of Frank and what had happened, but also telling of multiple past murders the family had been committing. which of course is going to shock the police. And they will go on to tell the story of a lot of men who had died coming through the house, including Garbaranth, an Italian peddler, a traveler, an elderly lover of Nancy, and 2 young women who had lived with the family. The 2 women was such a sad story because these ladies were just living in the house, one of whom at one point enrages Ed, and he will end up beating her to death in front of everyone to witness, which is so horrible. And fearing the second girl who was either related or good friends or whatever, but fearing that she had witnessed it all and she knew too much and was an outsider who couldn't be trusted, he would go on to kill her as well. Also, while allowing everyone to watch. The exact number of victims is truly unknown, but it is said that if the crimes on the men, the exact number of victims is truly unknown, but it is said that they did this over money and like robbing people. They said that the motive of it was just basically to rob unsuspecting people and people who would go unmissed. So basically these ladies who are turning on their family or whatever, I'm sure they were just fucking scared the whole time, I don't know, but had basically said that if the reason behind was actually robbery, the family only really gains like $100 in total. And it's like, is that worth murdering? I know $100 back then was a lot of fucking money, but not that much money, okay? Like, it's not gonna change your life type of money. Anyways, the police were able to collaborate some of the murders by being able to locate bodies in other abandoned mines. Of course, these bodies will be too badly damaged and there won't be enough real evidence, I guess, to charge these people with other murders. The girls were able to kind of point out a lot of where some of these people would be found and what had happened to them. And so, yeah, the police really assume, okay, these people out here killing people. Nancy, during her trial, will claim that she had no part in murdering Frank and didn't know why or where her sons went wrong. She would really play up her old age, and she was like a 65-year-old woman on the stands kind of sobbing. However, that will not work. A lot of people will kind of look at her like, yeah, okay, lady. And they sentence her to 25 years in prison. Nancy will go on and die in prison due to pneumonia in 1909 at the age of 81. And honestly, she will die never have admitting to any murder, like really pleading her innocence and never fessing up to anything that actually happened, and kind of putting all the blame on her sons. Which, I mean, I don't know. Some people, like, looking in the story, you only really know the background on Frank and what happened with Frank and the 2 girls, and then you kind of know the son, Ed. But it seemed as if it was true, the family kind of were all involved in this. Ed and George receive 1st and 2nd degree murder charges, both getting life sentences. Ma's second husband, Charles, will also go on and be caught and arrested. He will be charged with his previous crimes and the murder of Frank, where he will also get the life sentence. Now, Charles will say that he had no involvement in this murder and that him and Ma had only been married for 3 months prior to this and that he had no involvement in past murders or anything like that. But a lot of people say bullshit on that one too. Though Mike was not involved in Frank's murder, he will be in and out of jail serving multiple charges for various crimes throughout his life until he eventually also will be convicted of multiple murder charges that he had committed. Now, this brings me back to the disappearance of Nancy's first husband and why I have my doubts about his fleeing and just disappearing completely. It seems kind of suspicious to me that the family will be linked to a lot of murders for a lot less. And one of Nancy's lovers was also one of their victims. And him just have disappeared? Did he really flee? So in my opinion, I wonder if maybe he didn't actually flee and that Michael was potentially the family's first victim. And maybe they didn't flee their farm because of divorce judgment, but because of the fear of being caught. Or maybe there was some rumor spreading throughout the town. Hello, this is a small town, and it's hard to go back to such a long time ago. This is almost 200 years ago. So it's like, what was really happening there? And why did he just fall off the face of the earth? Which in the 1800s is very possible, but also, like I said, suspicious. But again, there is no evidence of this, and he could have definitely just fled and just truly disappeared. So, don't take my word for it. But yeah, I have my suspicions on all of that. I kind of think that maybe there was a murder there too. And yeah, because was there a divorce? And if there was a divorce, wouldn't the husband get the farm? Because, 1800s. And why would he just flee and leave his farm? And why would the family leave if he did leave? They have this property. So why leave, I question everything. Now, though, today, the house of murder, Madame Ma Staffelback, is believed to be still standing and was safe. It is now believed that the entire family, even the women, were in on the serial killing and robbing scheme. The Legend of America suggests that the Staffelback lured as many as 30 victims into this plot. She would have her girls discover which minors would be missed. She would have her girls discover which minors wouldn't be missed and were carrying a lot of money on their person. And they would either drug them or get them drunk and then lure them out of sight under the pretext of having a good time. Then, either Ma's sons or the men she was living with would murder the poor minors via a blow to the head with an axe. The bodies would be looted, often by Ma herself, and the bodies wrapped in canvas and thrown down one of the many mining shafts where it could be thought a mining accident had happened. At least 50 miners were murdered in the Victorian brothel before Ma was caught. Although she hoarded treasures, the bodies were never all found. Now, since saving the brothel, some question whether or not this is the correct house. However, it is said to be the murder brothel, and it's a museum for itself and can still be visited today. It's weird. I go back and forth how I feel about this family. Ed seemed like a real fucking creepy person and maybe just a hysterical serial killer, but it is true. But if it's true that the family was in on this murder robbing plot, which is very, very possible, then the whole family seems a bit psycho. And what would make them do such thing? What makes a family go down this path? And it also makes sense that for this time period, they were getting away with it for so long, and it's harder to track down people you don't know exist, So yeah, if they were really being smart about the victims that they were choosing, then a lot of people probably just think they disappeared to history. If in fact it was mostly Ma and her sons who did these murders, it definitely makes me question whether the dad of Nancy's first husband, Michael, actually disappeared or if she killed him. And this is maybe her villain origin story, her snapping point. And yeah, so what do you think? Do you think that maybe throughout history, this entire story got blown up to be more than it actually was? Do you think there was only one murder? Do you think they killed their dad? Or do you think Ma killed her husband? I don't know. I think that it's likely impossible. And this was a wild and violent town and violent people. So possibly they were doing this to gain money and didn't care about the people coming through this town and this life of theirs. So I could see it for sure, especially for the time period. It's crazy to me to think that maybe the entire family, even the daughters, were involved on it. It's like, yikes, that's not a good look, my friends. That's not a good look. But that, my friends, was the story of the weird, the bad, and the ugly, but also the spooky and the wild and strange life of the Sheffleback family. A family that found themselves murdering those that they deemed to be someone that would go unmissed, taking out people in pure anger or just because they felt like it. If you have been enjoying me, I highly suggest you follow me on Spotify so you know when new episodes are released. Also, if you're vibing with my spicy history stories, I recommend you jumping over to YouTube, subscribing, and checking out the video versions that are now available there. And with that, that's all I have for you today, this week, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. And until next time, goodbye.
I got something between my legs that'll make a dead man come. Oh, that. I got something between my legs that'll make a dead man come. Oh, that. Back my mattress and let you all my springs. I want you to find me, daddy, till the bell do ring. Oh.